Jake Morrison wiped sweat from his forehead as he checked the medical supplies in Bay 7 of the transport ship, Mercy's Hand. The ship was 3 days out from Earth and heading toward a distant moon, called Sylvanos Prime. Reports said a plague was killing the people there, and they needed help fast. Jake had been a combat medic for 6 years before joining the Medical Relief Corps. He knew how to treat wounds under fire and save lives when everything went wrong. The other doctors on the ship were good at their jobs, but they had never worked in a war zone. Jake hoped they would not need to learn. Captain Lisa Hayes walked into the medical bay carrying a datapad. She was a tall woman with short brown hair and worried eyes. Jake had worked with her for 2 years and trusted her completely. "We got more information about the situation," Lisa said. "The plague hit 5 villages so far. Over 3,000 people are sick or dead." Jake looked up from his supply check. "What kind of symptoms are we seeing?" "High fever, weakness, and something strange. The reports say the sick people lose their connection to the forest magic. The local healers cannot help them at all." The Sylvani people looked like humans, but with pointed ears and tall, thin bodies. They lived in harmony with their forest moon and used natural magic to heal and grow things. Jake had never met one, but he had studied their basic biology during the flight. "Sounds like it attacks their nervous system," Jake said. "Maybe their magical abilities, too. We should prepare for neurological cases." Dr. Kira Stellan entered the bay from the other door. She was from the Vorthan species and looked like a walking crystal sculpture. Her people were brilliant doctors who could see inside bodies without machines. Kira spoke in a musical voice that sounded like wind chimes. "The quantum scanners show unusual energy patterns on the moon surface," Kira said. "This may not be a natural plague." Jake stopped organizing bandages. "You think someone made this sickness on purpose?" "The energy readings suggest artificial biological agents. Someone may be using disease as a weapon." Captain Hayes frowned. "That changes everything. If this is an attack, we need to be ready for trouble." The ship shook suddenly. Red lights flashed, and an alarm started ringing throughout the halls. Jake grabbed the nearest wall to keep from falling as the ship shook again. "All hands to emergency stations," came a voice over the speaker system. "We are under attack." "Repeat, we are under attack." Jake ran to the emergency controls and started locking down the medical supplies. If the ship was in a fight, he needed to make sure nothing dangerous could break loose. Kira moved to the patient monitoring station while Lisa headed for the bridge. Ship rocked hard to the left. Jake heard the sound of metal tearing somewhere above them. Through the small window in the medical bay, he could see bright flashes of weapons fire outside. "Medical Bay 7, prepare for emergency separation," came another announcement. "Bay 7, prepare for pod launch in 60 seconds. Jake felt his stomach drop. Emergency separation meant the medical bay would be shot out of the ship like a lifeboat. It was designed to keep patients alive if the main ship was destroyed, but it was not meant for combat landings. "Kira, get to your escape pod," Jake shouted over the noise. "I need to stay with the medical supplies." "I will help you," she said, but Jake shook his head. "One person has a better chance in the pod. Go now." Kira looked like she wanted to argue, but another explosion rocked the ship. She ran for her escape pod as Jake strapped himself into the medical bay's emergency seat. The countdown reached 0, and Jake felt like he was being crushed by a giant hand. The medical bay separated from the main ship and fell toward the moon. Below, through the spinning window, Jake could see the Mercy's Hand breaking apart as enemy ships continued to attack it. The pod's heat shield glowed red as it hit the atmosphere. Jake held on tight as the bay spun and shook. The automatic systems tried to slow their fall, but Jake could tell they were coming in too, fast and at the wrong angle. Trees rushed up toward them. Jake saw a clearing ahead and hoped the pod would make it that far. The first treetops smashed against the pod's hull with loud cracking sounds. Branches broke and scattered as they crashed through the forest. The pod hit the ground hard and bounced twice before sliding to a stop against a large tree. Jake's ears rang and his left shoulder hurt, but he was alive. Smoke filled the air and he could smell burning metal. Jake unbuckled himself and checked the pod systems. Life support was working, but the communication system was dead. He was alone, on an alien moon with no way to call for help. He opened the emergency hatch and stepped outside. The forest around him was unlike anything on Earth. The trees were tall and silver, with leaves that seemed to glow with soft light. Strange flowers grew everywhere, and he could hear alien birds singing in the distance. But something was wrong. The forest felt sick. Many of the glowing leaves had turned brown and fallen to the ground. Some trees looked like they were dying. Jake gathered his medical kit and started walking toward what looked like smoke rising in the distance. If there were people nearby, he might be able to help them and find out what was happening. After 20 minutes of walking through the strange forest, Jake found a village. It was built around and inside the large trees with wooden bridges connecting different levels. The buildings looked like they had grown from the trees themselves, rather than being built by tools. But the village was too quiet. Jake could see bodies lying in the paths between the tree houses. Most were thin humanoid figures with pointed ears. The Silvani people. A young woman stepped out from behind one of the larger trees. She had long silver hair and green eyes that seemed to hold starlight. Her pointed ears marked her as Silvani, but she looked different from the others Jake had seen in the medical files. She carried a staff topped with a crystal that pulsed with weak light. "Stay back, Skyfaller," she said in accented English. "Death walks among us, and we cannot let it spread." Jake raised his hands to show he meant no harm. "My name is Jake Morrison. I am a doctor. I came here to help your people." The woman studied him carefully. "I am Zara Nightwhisper. I am the only healer left alive in this village." She pointed to the bodies around them. "Can your human medicine fight what the enemy has done to us?" Jake looked around the dying village and felt his training take over. Dead bodies meant disease, and disease meant he needed to work fast. He pulled on medical gloves and opened his emergency kit. "Show me the sick people first," Jake told Zara. "I need to understand what this plague does before I can help anyone." Zara led him to a large treehouse where soft moaning sounds came from inside. Jake climbed the wooden stairs and found 12 Silvani people lying on beds made of woven branches. Their skin was pale and covered in dark veins that pulsed like infected wounds. "The sickness came 3 days ago," Zara explained. "First the children got sick, then the adults. Our healing magic does nothing. The forest connection dies in them, and then their bodies follow." Jake knelt beside a young Silvani boy who could not have been more than 10 years old. The child's breathing was shallow, and his temperature felt too high. Jake took out his medical scanner and ran it over the boy's body. The readings made Jake frown. This is not a natural plague. Someone made this sickness in a laboratory. Made it? Zara's eyes grew wide. Who would create such evil? "I do not know yet, but I can see what it does. The disease attacks the nervous system and something else. Something that connects you to magic." Jake stood up and looked at the other patients. "How many people lived in this village before the sickness came?" 237, Zara said quietly. "Now only 15 are still alive, and most of them are dying." Jake felt anger building in his chest. Whoever had done this had murdered an entire village of innocent people. But anger would not save lives. He needed to focus on medicine. "I need to take blood samples," Jake said. Can you help me explain to the patients what I am doing? For thee. Next hour, Jake worked alongside Zara to collect samples and examine the sick. The Sylvani people were afraid of his strange medical tools, but Zara convinced them to trust the human doctor who had fallen from the sky. Jake's portable lab could analyze blood and tissue in about 30 minutes. While they waited, he asked Zara to show him the local plants that our people used for medicine. Many of them had properties that could help fight infection and reduce fever. These blue flowers contain something like aspirin, Jake said, crushing petals between his fingers. And this bark has natural antibiotics in it. Your people know medicine, even if they call it something else. The forest teaches us, Zara replied. But the forest is sick too. Look around you. The trees are dying just like my people. Jake had noticed the brown leaves and dying branches. If the bioweapon attacked both the Sylvani people and their forest, then whoever made it understood the connection between them. A crashing sound in the forest made them both look up. Jake heard human voices shouting and the sound of someone running through the thick trees. Jake Morrison, are you out there? Jake recognized the voice. Amy Chun, over here. A woman in a torn flight suit stumbled into the village clearing. Amy Chun was the chief engineer from the Mercy's Hand. She had cuts on her face, and her left arm was in a makeshift sling, but she was alive. Thank God you made it, Amy said, breathing hard. I saw your pod go down, but I did not know if you survived. The crash. Jake hugged his old friend carefully. What happened to the ship? Did anyone else make it out? Captain Hayes got at least 3 escape pods away before the ship broke apart. I do not know about the others. Amy looked around the village with sad eyes. Is this what we came to help? This is just one village. The attack hit 5 different places. Jake showed Amy the blood test results on his scanner. Someone used a biological weapon designed to kill magical species. Look at these readings. Amy studied the data. The molecular structure is too complex to occur naturally. This was definitely made in a laboratory. She paused and looked at Zara. Can she understand what we are saying? I speak your language well enough, Zara said with a slight smile. My people learn the speech of many worlds. We are not as primitive as you might think. Sorry, Amy said. I did not mean to be rude. I am just trying to understand the situation. Jake's scanner beeped as it finished processing the latest blood sample. The results made him excited for the first time since the crash. I think I can help these people, Jake announced. The bioweapon attacks their magical nervous system, but it is still basically a virus. If I combine human antiviral medicine with local plants that boost their natural healing, I might be able to slow it down or stop it. Might? Zara asked. Medicine is not magic. I cannot promise miracles, but I can try. Jake spent the rest of the day working on a treatment. He ground up local healing plants and mixed them with synthetic compounds from his medical kit. Amy helped by building a better lab setup using parts from both their crashed pods. As the sun set, Jake had his first batch of experimental medicine ready. Zara had convinced the village elder, an ancient Sylvani named Moonweaver, to try the treatment first. If this kills me, then at least I will die quickly instead of slowly, the old man said with a weak smile. Jake injected the medicine into Moonweaver's arm, and then they waited. For 2 hours, nothing happened. Then the dark veins on the elder's skin began to fade. His breathing got easier, and some color returned to his pale face. It is working, Zara whispered. I can feel the forest connection growing stronger in him. By morning, Jake had treated 8 patients with his experimental cure. 7 of them showed improvement. The 8th, a young woman who had been sick the longest, died during the night, but Jake knew her case was probably hopeless anyway. You saved them, Zara said as they watched the surviving patient sit up and talk for the first time in days. You brought healing from the sky. We are not done. Yet, Jake replied. This treatment slows the disease, but does not cure it completely. And there are still 4 other villages that need help. A new sound reached them from the forest. It was the low humming of flying machines. Jake shaded his eyes and looked up to see 3 dark ships moving between the trees. They did not look like rescue vessels. Those are not your people, Zara said with fear in her voice. Those ships brought the sickness before. The ships landed in the village, clearing, and armored figures stepped out. They wore black metal suits and carried weapons that glowed with red energy. Jake could not see their faces behind their helmets, but he could tell they were not human or Sylvani. You will surrender the Skyfaller, one of them said in a mechanical voice. He interferes with our harvest. Jake looked at his medical supplies, and then at the sick people he had been treating. He was a doctor, not a soldier. But sometimes, doctors had to fight to protect their patients. Zara, get the survivors to the deep forest, Jake said quietly. I will hold them off as long as I can. You cannot fight them alone, she replied. I have to try. These people need more time to recover. Jake picked up a fallen branch and wished he had brought a weapon instead of just medical supplies. The armored figures raised their glowing weapons toward him. I am a healer, Jake called out to them. Why do you want to stop me from saving lives? Because, the mechanical voice replied, dead magic users serve our purposes better than living ones. The armored figure with the glowing weapon stepped closer to Jake. Through the dark helmet, Jake could see mechanical parts where a face should be. Half machine and half something else that had once been alive. You are the human medic from the destroyed ship, the figure said. Our sensors detected your interference with the biological harvest protocol. Jake kept the wooden branch raised, even though it would be useless against their advanced weapons. Harvest protocol? You are talking about murdering innocent people. We harvest magical essence to power our technology. The Sylvani forest dwellers possess high levels of magical energy. When they die, their essence is released, and we collect it. Amy moved up beside Jake, carrying a piece of metal from her crashed pod. You sick bastards. You created a plague to farm people like crops. More armored figures emerged from the ships. Jake counted 12 of them now, all carrying the same red energy weapons. Behind their helmets, he could see more mechanical parts, and glowing lights where eyes should be. We are the Harvester Collective, their leader announced. We have perfected this biological weapon over many worlds. Magical species die, and we grow stronger. Zara stepped out from behind the treehouse, where she had been hiding the survivors. Her crystal staff glowed brighter than Jake had seen before, and her green eyes blazed with anger. You killed my family, she said in a voice like ice. You destroyed my forest. You will pay for what you have done. A young healer still has fight in her, the harvester leader said with what might have been amusement. Excellent. Living subjects with strong magical connections are even more valuable than dead ones. 2 harvesters moved toward Zara, but Jake jumped between them. He swung his branch at the nearest one and managed to knock the weapon from its hands. The creature backhanded him across the face, and Jake fell hard to the ground. Jake, Amy shouted. She threw her piece of metal at another harvester, but it bounced off the armor without causing damage. The sound of human military engines filled the air. 3 Earth Defense Force ships dropped down through the trees and landed near the harvester vessels. Soldiers in brown and green uniforms poured out with weapons ready. This is Commander Rita Stone of the EDF rescue mission, came a voiceover. A speaker. Unidentified hostiles, stand down immediately. The harvester leader turned his weapon toward the new arrivals. More humans. Your species lacks magical essence, but your technology is useful. We will harvest your ships instead. The Battle began without warning. Red energy beams shot between the trees, while human soldiers fired back with plasma rifles. Jake crawled behind a fallen log and pulled Amy down beside him. "We need to get the villagers out of here," Jake shouted over the noise of weapons fire. Zara ran toward them in a crouch. "There is a cave system in the deep forest. We can hide the sick people there until the fighting ends." Jake looked around the battlefield. The human soldiers were good, but they were outnumbered, and the harvester weapons were more advanced. Several EDF troops were already down, and more were falling back. "Help me get the patients moved," Jake said to Amy and Zara. "I am not losing anyone else today." They ran back to the treehouse, where the recovering Sylvani people waited in fear. Jake helped carry those who were too weak to walk, while Zara led them through hidden forest paths toward the caves. Behind them the battle grew more intense. Jake could hear Commander Stone shouting orders to her troops, and the mechanical voices of harvesters coordinating their attack. The cave entrance was hidden behind a waterfall deep in the forest. Jake had never seen anything like it. The walls glowed with natural crystals that provided soft light, and the air felt clean and fresh. "This place is sacred to our people," Zara explained as they settled the sick villagers on beds of moss. "The forest magic is strong here. Your medicine will work better." Jake set up his medical station near the cave entrance, where he could monitor both his patients and the distant battle. The sounds of fighting had moved further away, but he could still see flashes of energy weapons through the trees. "Dr. Morrison?" A new voice spoke from the cave entrance. Jake turned to see a tall woman with dark skin and silver hair. She wore a black outfit that seemed to absorb light, and her eyes were completely white. "Who are you?" Jake asked, reaching for his medical scanner in case she was another threat. "My name is Vera Blackthorn. I am from the Noxian species. I have been hiding on this moon for 3 months." Amy stepped forward with a suspicious look. "Hiding from what?" "From them," Vera pointed toward the distant battle. "I used to work for the Harvester Collective. I helped them create the biological weapons they use to kill magical species." Jake felt his anger rising again. "You helped murder these people?" "I did not know what the weapons would be used for," Vera said quickly. "They told me we were developing medicine to help sick worlds. When I learned the truth, I stole research data and escaped." "Why should we trust you?" Zara demanded. Her crystal staff pulsed with threatening light. Vera reached into her dark clothing and pulled out a small device covered in strange symbols. "Because I have the complete genetic code for their bioweapon. And more importantly, I know how to destroy their production facility." Jake took the device and connected it to his medical scanner. The data that appeared made his eyes go wide. "This shows everything. How they made the virus, how it spreads, how to counter it completely." "There is more," Vera continued. "The Harvesters have a space station in orbit around this moon. They are producing enough bioweapon to attack dozens of worlds at the same time. If we do not stop them, soon millions more will die." The sounds of battle suddenly got much closer. Through the waterfall, Jake could see human soldiers running through the forest with harvesters chasing them. Commander Stone's voice came over a radio communicator. "All units fall back to the caves. Repeat, fall back to defensive positions." Jake looked at his recovering patients, and then at the data Vera had given him. He was a medic, trained to save lives, not fight wars. But sometimes saving lives meant stopping those who wanted to take them. "How do we destroy their station?" Jake asked Vera. "The magical essence they harvest is highly unstable. If someone could get inside the station and overload their storage tanks, the explosion would destroy everything." "That sounds like a suicide mission," Amy said. "Not if we do it right," Jake replied, studying the station blueprints on his scanner. "I know their biological systems now. I can make myself appear infected, so they will bring me aboard as another harvest subject. Zara grabbed his arm. That is too dangerous. If they discover you are not really dying, they will kill you immediately. Maybe, but if I do nothing, they will kill everyone on this moon and then move on to the next world. Jake looked around at the 6 Sylvani people who trusted him to protect them. I became a doctor to save lives. Sometimes that means taking risks. Commander Stone stumbled into the cave with 3 wounded soldiers. She was a tough-looking woman with short red hair and burn marks on her uniform. Dr. Morrison? Thank God you are alive. We picked up your pod's distress signal. She looked around the cave. How many civilians do you have here? 15 survivors from this village plus refugees from other areas, Jake replied. Commander, I need to ask you about mounting an assault on the Harvester orbital station. Stone's eyebrows went up. With what army? I have 12 soldiers left, and their technology is better than ours. Not an army. A medical infiltration. Jake showed her Vera's data. If I can get aboard their station, I can stop the bioweapon production. Permanently. Absolutely not. You are a medic, not a commando. I am a medic who is tired of watching people die from preventable causes, Jake said firmly. This plague is preventable. We just have to prevent it at the source. Commander Stone looked at the tactical data and then at Jake's determined face. If we do this insane plan, you will need backup. I cannot spare soldiers, but I can give you everything we know about infiltrating enemy vessels. Jake nodded. Then we better get started. The longer we wait, the more people will die on other worlds. As he began planning the most dangerous mission of his life, Jake wondered if he would still be the same person when it was over. He had signed an oath to do no harm, but sometimes protecting the innocent meant harming those who threatened them. Outside the cave, the battle for Sylvanos Prime continued, but inside, Jake Morrison prepared to take the fight directly to the enemy. Jake injected himself with a modified version of the Harvester bioweapon and immediately felt sick to his stomach. Vera had helped him create a fake infection that would fool their sensors without actually killing him. He hoped the false symptoms will last about 6 hours, Vera explained as Jake's skin began to show the dark veins that marked infected victims. After that, your immune system will fight off the modified virus. And if their medical scanners are better than we think? Amy asked. Then Jake will die horribly, and we will have to find another way to stop them, Vera said without emotion. Commander Stone shook her head. This is the worst plan I have ever heard. But since it is also the only plan we have, I guess we are doing it. Jake put on torn civilian clothes to look like a crash survivor and hid his medical scanner inside his jacket. The device was modified to appear broken to Harvester sensors while still letting him monitor the fake infection. Remember, Vera said, act weak and confused. Infected people lose their mental clarity as the virus progresses. Do not let them. See that you are thinking clearly. Zara stepped forward and pressed something into Jake's hand. It was a small crystal from her healing staff. This will let me know if you are still alive. If the light goes out, I will know you have failed. I will not fail, Jake promised. Too many people are counting on this mission. The plan was simple in concept, but terrifying in practice. Jake would let the Harvesters capture him as an infected survivor. They would take him to their orbital station for magical essence extraction. Once aboard, he would locate the main storage tanks and cause an overload that would destroy the entire facility. Commander Stone's remaining soldiers created a distraction attack on the Harvester ground forces, while Jake stumbled out of the forest acting like a dying plague victim. Within minutes, a Harvester patrol found him collapsed beside a stream. Another infected human, one of them said in their mechanical voice. Unusual. This species normally lacks magical essence. The readings are different. another replied, scanning Jake with a handheld device. This subject shows traces of magical energy. Perhaps exposure to the infected Sylvani has caused mutation. Jake moaned weakly and let his eyes roll back as they carried him to their transport ship. Through half-closed eyelids, he studied their technology and memorized the layout of their vessel. The trip to the orbital station took 30 minutes. Jake used the time to listen to Harvester communications and learned that they had captured over 200 Sylvani from different villages. All were being held in the station's processing center waiting for essence extraction. The station was massive. Jake could see it growing larger through the transport window as they approached. It looked like a giant metal spider with multiple arms extending in all directions. Each arm contained laboratories, storage tanks, and holding cells for captured victims. Prisoner transport arriving at Docking Bay 7, the pilot announced, delivering one potentially viable human subject for evaluation. Jake was carried through corridors filled with humming machinery and blinking lights. The air smelled like metal and chemicals. Harvester technicians moved through the halls like walking nightmares of flesh and machine parts. They brought him to a medical examination room where a harvester doctor waited. This one was more machine than organic, with multiple mechanical arms and sensors where a normal head should be. Interesting specimen, the doctor said, running scanners over Jake's body. Human physiology with magical energy traces. We have not encountered this combination before. Jake forced himself to remain limp as the mechanical arms poked and prodded him. The fake infection was working perfectly. All their readings showed a dying human contaminated with magical plague. Place him in holding cell block C with the other infected subjects, the doctor decided. We will harvest his essence after the current batch is processed. The holding cells were in the station's central arm. Jake was thrown into a small room with metal walls and a single window looking out into space. But he was not alone. A human woman sat in the corner wearing the torn uniform of a research scientist. She had brown hair streaked with gray and intelligent eyes that studied Jake carefully. You are new, she said quietly. I am Dr. Mia Torres. I was captured 3 days ago when they attacked my research station. Jake sat up slowly, still pretending to be weak from infection. Jake Morrison. I am a medic from the ship that crashed on the moon. A medic? Mia moved closer and lowered her voice. Then you know about medicine. Tell me, do those infection marks on your skin look right to you? Jake realized she had spotted something wrong with his fake symptoms. Mia was clearly a smart scientist who knew how to observe details. What do you mean? Jake asked carefully. I have been watching the real infected prisoners for days. Your symptoms are wrong. The vein patterns are too regular, and your pupils are not dilated enough. She leaned back with a slight smile. So either you are immune to their bioweapon, or you are not really infected at all. There was no point in lying to someone that observant. You are right. I am here to stop them from spreading their plague to other worlds. One person against an entire space station? That is either very brave or very stupid. Probably both, Jake admitted. But I have help and a plan. Mia looked toward the cell door and then back at Jake. What kind of help? Jake showed her the modified medical scanner hidden in his jacket. I know how their biological weapons work, and I know how to destroy their magical essence storage system. The storage tanks are heavily guarded. Even if you could reach them, the explosion would kill everyone on this station, including all the prisoners they plan to murder anyway, Jake pointed out. At least this way their deaths would stop the harvesters from killing millions more. A new voice spoke from the cell across the hall. The human speaks truth. Death with purpose is better than death with none. Jake looked through the bars and saw a Sylvani woman with silver hair and burn scars on her face. She wore torn warrior clothing, and her green eyes blazed with anger. "I am Arya Starweaver," she said. "I have been hunting these metal demons for 2 months, since they destroyed my home village." "How did you end up captured?" Jake asked. "I let them capture me. I wanted to find their main base and destroy it from within." She smiled grimly. "It seems we have the same plan, human medic." Over the next hour, Jake learned that there were nearly 50 prisoners in the holding cells. Most were Sylvani, but there were also humans, Vorthans, and members of other species that possessed magical abilities. "They are planning a mass extraction tomorrow," Mia explained. "Something about a special ceremony to harvest essence from multiple species at once." Jake checked his hidden scanner. The fake infection was starting to fade, which meant he was running out of time. If the harvesters discovered his deception, they would kill him immediately. "I need to reach the storage tanks tonight," Jake told his cellmates. "Can anyone tell me the layout of this station?" Arya pressed against the cell bars. "I memorized the guard rotations during my capture. There is a shift change in 2 hours, when only half the normal security will be watching the corridors. The main storage area is in the station's central core," Mia added. "But you will need access codes to get inside." "I can help with that," said another voice. Jake turned to see a young Sylvani man in the next cell. "I am Luna Brightleaf. I used to work with electronic systems before the harvesters attacked my village. If you can get me to a control terminal, I can override their security." Jake felt hope building in his chest. "So we have technical skills, tactical knowledge, and someone who knows the station layout. What about weapons?" "The harvesters took our weapons, but they did not search very carefully," Arya said with a dangerous smile. She reached into her boot and pulled out a small but sharp crystal blade. "They underestimate what prisoners can accomplish. And they definitely underestimate what a determined medic can do," Jake added, checking the modified compounds he had prepared using his medical supplies. The plan that formed over the next hour was desperate and dangerous. During the guard shift change, they would break out of their cells, fight their way to the central core, and destroy the magical essence storage system before the harvesters could stop them. Jake knew that most of them would probably die in the attempt, but if they succeeded, thousands of worlds would be saved from the harvester plague. Sometimes being a healer meant making the hardest choice of all. As the time for their escape approached, Jake thought about Zara and the other survivors, waiting in the caves below. He touched the crystal she had given him and hoped its light would still be glowing when this was over. "Ready?" Arya asked as she began working on the cell lock with her hidden blade. Jake checked his medical scanner one final time and then put it away. From now on, he would need to rely on his training, his courage, and his determination to save lives no matter what the cost. "Ready?" he said, and meant it. The cell door opened with a soft click as Arya finished picking the lock. Jake felt his heart pounding as they prepared to fight their way through a space station full of cybernetic killers. He was a medic, not a soldier, but tonight he would have to be both. "Stay close and move fast," Arya whispered as she led them into the corridor. "The guard post is around the next corner." They moved like shadows through the metal hallways. Jake carried medical compounds that could be turned into explosives, while Luna carried hacking tools made from broken electronics. Mia had fashioned a weapon from pieces of her scientific equipment. The first harvester guard they encountered never saw them coming. Arya's crystal blade found the gap between his armor plates, while Jake used the sedative injection to disable his backup systems. They dragged the body into an empty room and continued toward the central core. "Security terminal ahead," Luna whispered, pointing to a glowing control panel. "Give me 3 minutes to break their codes." Jake stood watch while Luna worked his electronic magic. Through the corridor windows, he could see the curve of Sylvanos Prime below them. Somewhere down there, Zara was waiting for his signal. "Got it," Luna announced. "Security grid is down for the next 10 minutes. They ran through corridors lined with humming machinery. Jake tried not to think about what the machines were designed to do to captured prisoners. All that mattered now was reaching the storage tanks before their escape was discovered. The central core was a massive chamber, filled with glowing tanks that contained the magical essence stolen from murdered victims. Each tank pulsed with different colored light, and Jake could feel the power radiating from them, even through the metal walls. "How much essence are they storing here?" Mia asked in horror. "Enough to power their entire fleet," came a mechanical voice from behind them. "And enough to kill anyone foolish enough to damage our property." Jake spun around to see High Harvester Vex, the cybernetic leader of the entire collective. He was more machine than any of the others, with multiple arms ending in different weapons and tools. His eyes glowed red in a skull that was half metal and half rotting flesh. "The fake infected human and his little rescue team," Vex said with what might have been amusement. "Did you really think we would not detect your deception?" More harvesters poured into the chamber, carrying the red energy weapons Jake had seen on the planet's surface. They were surrounded with no way to escape. "You cannot stop what we have started," Vex continued. "Tomorrow we launch bioweapons at 12 different worlds. Millions of magical beings will die, and their essence will feed our expansion across the galaxy." Jake looked at the storage tanks and made a decision that went against everything he had been trained to believe. He pulled out his modified medical compounds and held them above one of the essence containers. "One more step and I drop these chemicals into your storage system," Jake warned. "The reaction will destroy this entire station. You will die along with everyone else here," Vex pointed out. "I know, but millions of others will live." Jake met the creature's glowing eyes without flinching. "I became a medic to save lives. If my death saves more lives than my survival, then the choice is easy. You are bluffing. Humans value their own existence above all else." "You do not understand humans very well," Jake replied. "We are willing to sacrifice everything for the people we care about." Arya stepped up beside him with her crystal blade ready. "The Sylvani feel the same way. My people will be avenged." Luna and Mia moved to flank them, creating a circle of defiance around the essence storage tanks. They were outnumbered 50-1, but they stood firm. "Fascinating," Vex said. "Multiple species working together against impossible odds. We have encountered this phenomenon before on other worlds. It always ends the same way." "How does it end?" Jake asked. "With everyone dead and us harvesting the essence from your corpses." The harvesters raised their weapons, but Jake was already moving. He threw his chemical compounds at 3 different storage tanks while diving behind a control console. The explosions began immediately. Magical essence mixed with human chemistry created a chain reaction that spread from tank to tank. The chamber filled with brilliant light as decades of stolen power was released all at once. Jake felt the energy wash over him like standing in the middle of a star. His medical training told him he should be dead, but somehow the mixture of human and alien technology was keeping him alive out through the chaos. He saw Arya fighting 3 harvesters at once with inhuman speed and skill. Luna was at a control terminal, sending override commands that opened all the prisoner cells throughout the station. Mia had found a harvester weapon and was using it to hold off reinforcements. High Harvester Vex stumbled toward Jake with half his mechanical body sparking and damaged. "You have doomed yourself for nothing. Our fleet will continue the harvest without this station." "Maybe," Jake said, pulling out his medical scanner to show the data Vera had given him. "But now everyone in the galaxy will know how to cure your bioweapon. The harvest is over." Vex lunged at him with metal claws extended, but never reached his target. The essence explosion had grown too powerful to contain. The station shook apart around them as magical energy tore through metal walls like paper. Jake felt himself falling through space, but the released essence formed a protective bubble around him and his friends. They drifted away from the exploding station, wrapped in the collective power of everyone. The harvesters had murdered. The essence carried them down through the atmosphere of Sylvanas Prime and deposited them safely in the forest near the hidden caves. Jake rolled to his feet and immediately started checking his friends for injuries. "Everyone alive?" he called out. "Barely," Mia replied, sitting up with a dazed expression. "What just happened up there?" "Magic," Luna said with wonder in his voice. "The spirits of the harvested dead protected us as we fell." Jake looked up at the sky where the harvester station had been. Nothing remained but a field of sparkling lights that slowly faded into space. It was over. Zara came running through the forest with tears in her eyes. "Jake, the crystal went dark, and I thought you were dead." "I thought I was too," Jake admitted, hugging her tight. "But somehow we made it." Commander Stone emerged from the cave with her surviving soldiers. "Morrison, what the hell did you do up there?" "Our sensors detected an explosion that could be seen from 3 star systems away. We stopped them," Jake said simply. "The bioweapon production facility is destroyed, and we have the cure for their plague." Over the following days, Jake worked with human and Sylvani medical teams to distribute the cure to every affected world. The fake infection he had given himself provided the final key to creating a permanent immunity to harvester bioweapons. Vera proved her worth by helping design new defenses against future attacks. She joined Commander Stone's expanded military unit as Chief Science Officer and Tactical Advisor. Amy took command of a new medical vessel built with both human technology and Sylvani forest magic. Luna became her chief engineer, while Mia headed the research division. Jake found himself changed by what he had experienced. He was still a medic dedicated to saving lives, but now he understood that sometimes healing required fighting. He accepted a position as director of the new Interspecies Medical Defense Corps. "You look troubled," Zara said as they walked through the recovering forest around her village. The trees were green again, and magical creatures had returned to sing in the branches. "I keep thinking about what I had to do on that station," Jake replied. "I killed people." "That goes against everything I was taught as a doctor." "You killed murderers to save innocents," Zara corrected. "There is a difference." "Is there?" "I used to think medicine was simple. Heal the sick, help the injured, do no harm. Now I know it is more complicated than that." Zara stopped walking and took his hands in hers. "The forest teaches us that life and death are part of the same cycle. Sometimes death clears the way for new life to grow." Jake looked around at the healthy forest and the Sylvani children playing among the trees. These people were alive because he had chosen to fight for them. Maybe that was enough. "What happens now?" he asked. "Now we build something better," Zara replied. "A galaxy where healers and warriors work together to protect those who cannot protect themselves." Jake thought about that as they continued their walk. He was no longer just a medic, and he was no longer just human. He had become something new, something that bridged the gap between healing and protecting. When the next crisis came, and Jake knew there would be others, he would be ready. He would carry medical supplies and weapons side by side. He would save lives and take them when necessary. He was Dr. Jake Morrison, founder of the Medical Defense Corps, protector of the innocent, and living proof that sometimes the best way to heal the galaxy was to fight for it. The forest around him whispered with magical voices, and for the first time since the crash, Jake Morrison felt completely at peace with who he had become.